Kia ora, welcome to Scanning Techniques and Victim Identification. If you're following along in your manual or you want to do some pre-reading or post-reading, pages 50 through 52. If you're filling out your workbook at the same time and you want to check your answers, that's page 15 and 16. And this is all to do with skills and knowledge required to respond in rescues. Okay, so things that affect scanning techniques and requirements. The number of users and their activities, that's going to shape how we run our beach, how we do our scanning, and what sort of things we need. So for example, if we've got swimmers, surfers, fishermen and watercraft users, we might need to put extra people on flags to cope with the number of swimmers, or we might want to put someone on the water's edge near some kayakers, for example. Generally with watercraft users, you find that unless they're surf club watercraft users, you find that they're actually not that confident in water, which is why they choose flotation devices. We might want to send people to the south end of Bethells to check on the fishermen at the rocks. We might want to send people over to O'Neill's to check on the surfers, but generally not. The thing that we go over to O'Neill's for is usually because there are swimmers. The surfers, if they're surfing at O'Neill's, are usually pretty good surfers. The number of lifeguards in their locations. So scanning is going to be affected, or we'll have to run our beach differently if we've only got a few lifeguards on patrol. Or if we've got more lifeguards at the club than on the beach, that's going to change things. Or lifeguards required at the lake, waterfall or adjacent beaches. I mean, if we've got more lifeguards at the surf club than on the beach, maybe if there's a lake call out required or a call out to the waterfall, those are the people we're going to send, because we certainly don't want to deplete our beach staffing. The beach layout and any specific geographic features. So at Piha they've got Lion Rock and there are dangerous associated rips with it, but it's also tough to see people past there. So it's hard for the United North Piha people to see all the way down to Lion Rock, and then obviously South Piha, they can't see past Lion Rock, so it is a bit of a grey area. For us, the island at Bethells is called Ihumoana, and we get people jumping off the back side of it, the northern side of it, and catching waves in through Ding Bay, but it's actually also a really, I mean, it's not called Ding Bay for no reason. You get dinged up if you are swimming in there or surfing in there. It's a dangerous spot. Its real name is Waitakere Bay. The island at O'Neill's might be obstructing our view if we're looking to see if there are any swimmers out at O'Neill's, and that island's called Kawahaia. The sand dune itself between Waitakere Bay and O'Neill's is going to get in our way, and as a geographic feature as well. It means that we have to send people up the top to check if there's anyone there. So we're doing roving patrols a lot. All that being said, the flags are still our priority area. If someone was drowning at the south end of Bethells, if a fisherman fell in, but someone was also drowning inside the flags, our first priority is to the people swimming in the flags. And obviously we've got enough lifeguards. We're pretty lucky at Bethells that we've got enough lifeguards to send response teams to both at the same time, but technically your flagged area gets priority. Other things to think about that affect scanning: glare. Different times of the day you might find that guarding, you need a higher vantage point. You need to get your mobile tower closer to the water's edge to fight some of the glare at the end of the day that's coming off the sea. Making sure you're wearing sunnies, because that in itself can help deal with some of that glare, and we might miss people if we haven't got control of that. 5 key points for scanning. Alright, so in your exam and in your workbook, these are worded funny, so make sure you write them in the right section. The 5 key points for scanning: fixed focus. Focus on specific people and what they are doing. Look and listen for the unusual. And that's actually a really important note. you want to use all of your senses. We want to be obviously using our vision. We're looking for lifeguards signaling us. We're looking for the signs of someone drowning. We're looking for people's body language. We're looking for people outside the flags. All of those sort of things. Listening, using that. What if heard you heard someone impact something? Maybe they were playing on these rocks and you heard them hit the ground. You heard their head specifically hit the ground. That's going to change our whole response. You heard an explosion. You heard them say something, that was made beachgoers feel unsafe or something like that. Look, listen, and the other sense that is really worth thinking about is actually a sense of smell. Is someone drunk? Can you smell alcohol on their breath? Can you smell burning? Are we dealing with some kind of a forest fire somewhere? Or chemicals, maybe car fumes in your car park or something like that. All of those things can be actually really dangerous, and the misconception is that as lifeguards all we're doing is watching between the flags, but it's so much bigger than that. Wide focus. Use your periphery vision, your side view, to detect movement and notice activity. So while I am on tower and I'm watching the flags, remember the person on flags has 100% of their vision on the flagged area, but if I'm on tower I'm going to be watching the flags as well as the rest of the beach, so I can use my side view, my peripheral vision to detect movement, to see odd things. Avoid fatigue. If you stare fixedly for a long period of time, you'll find that you get tired a lot faster, and you also get bored and complacent. You won't be noticing the movements if we're staying in the same place. And so it's a really good point to note that we want to change our posture and our position every 5 minutes as well. But that's part of the 5-minute scanning techniques, which is not this one. So that's what I was saying before about making sure. These are 5 key points for scanning. The 5-minute scanning strategy is actually separate, and we'll talk about that next. Moving focus. Move your eyes at a moderate pace across the surveillance area, sweeping back and forth to take in environmental conditions that might affect patrol behaviour and safety issues. Okay, so definitely you might want to pause and have a reread of that. We want to make sure that we're moving at a moderate pace over the whole surveillance area, and we want to keep double checking that as well. If I'm in the tower on tower duty, I do a walk around the tower and make sure that I've seen 360 degrees around that tower. It's not good enough to know what's happening just in front of me, because people are climbing the rocks behind you. People are using the lagoon area as well. So I want to make sure that I'm sweeping across that whole surveillance area at a moderate pace so that I'm seeing everything. I want to take in the environmental conditions as well that might affect my patrol behaviour or safety issues. Is there a storm coming in? Is that going to change how we set up our patrol? Maybe we're about to call foul weather patrol, or maybe we're seeing some hectic sweeper waves coming through, and we want to change where we're putting our flags, for example. Tracking a particular moving target for a set period. Track the progress of an individual who submerges and those who fit high-risk profiles. And a little story about that. In the summer of 2014-2015, we had a full-on domestic abuse case on the beach, like right in front of the tower. This man was laying into his girlfriend. The lifeguard split it up. Female lifeguard went with the lady, and the guy ended up running off after they split it up. And if we're thinking about using all of our senses, they could tell, the lifeguards on that day could tell that the couple were both drunk as well. You could smell the alcohol. And in terms of tracking, we put a lifeguard in plain clothes and with a radio, and followed this guy because we'd called the police on him. And what he'd done was he'd gone back to his car to drive away, and we were able to get his registration, and police picked him up as he left the Bethel's area, which was amazing. The principles of a 5-minute scan strategy. So you're scanning specifics. So just check in your workbook now that you've written your 5 key points to quality scanning and your 5-minute scanning strategy in the right place. And if you haven't, either rewrite it or put arrows to show which one goes where. So, principles of a 5-minute scan strategy. Every 5 minutes, change the 3 Ps. Change your posture, your position, and your scanning pattern. So you can see even this picture in the background, this is one of our lifeguards, Lockie. He's sitting on this bit, but Ariana here is sitting on this top bit. There might be bits where you'll find that either one of them stand. Maybe we're standing beside the rhino, maybe we're sitting on top of it, maybe we're standing in the tray for a bit of a vantage point, maybe we're standing to the left of the flags or to the right of the flags, maybe we're taking a knee on the sand. All of those things are going to help keep you alert. If I find that I've got a strong pull to the south, I'm going to position myself more so on that southern flag. I might then move closer to the water's edge. I might then come back and stand and get that vantage point off the rhino. So I'm trying to change my posture and position every 5 minutes. Maybe I'll be sitting. I try not to sit for too long because it's too easy to again become apathetic and not realise what's actually going on between your flags. We'll talk more about different scanning patterns. One thing I find handy about different scanning patterns though is going through different types of user groups. So I'll count how many fishermen we've got over our entire beach, how many dolphins we've got, how many surfers we've got, how many people on the flags we've got, how many females we've got, how many males we've got, and those sort of things really help me stay alert over that space. It really gives me a really good picture of our beach as well. Another thing I might count is how many lifeguards we've got, where they are, what gear I've got around me as well. Obviously, if I'm on flags, my sole job is watching people in the flags. That's my job. I don't need to worry about those other things. But in any of our other stations or rotation positions, then yeah, I can think about those other things. To reduce eye fatigue, you move your head and your eyes together. So rather than just moving your eyes and keeping your head still, you want to move them both at the same time. And it might sound silly, but by the end of the day, you'll have really sore eyes if you don't employ this technique. And if you're going to do regional guarding, if you're going to do the paid lifeguard service, you definitely want to be able to work a full 40-hour week of doing all this stuff and looking after your health amongst that. Rotation keeps you more alert. Okay, so when we're talking about rotation, we're talking about the fact that after flag duty, I might go and do in-water flag duty. After that, I might then go and have a lunch break back at the club. I might then go on tower duty. I might then go on roving patrol. Each of those stations usually will last, up to half an hour. In the paid lifeguard service, you normally do about a 45-minute rotation through each of your stations, and that way you're not getting bored and complacent. Every time a new lifeguard comes to take over you, you'll tell them about the conditions that you're facing, about your high-risk people, about what your tide's doing, all of that sort of stuff. You'll hand that over to that next person. Movement helps prevent boredom. If you, every 5 minutes, are changing your position, your posture, your scanning pattern. Maybe if you're pacing up and down those flags, if you are in tower and you're standing for a little bit and then you walk around the tower, those sort of things are going to help prevent boredom really well. And we want to count people in the area every 5 minutes as well. I probably do it a bit more than every 5 minutes. You'll find that 5 minutes is actually quite a long time. But again, it also depends on how many people you've got in your flagged area. Those 5 scanning patterns. Horizontal, from left to right, from front to back. And you can actually do this either way. You could go left to right, or you could go right to left. There is evidence that right to left is actually better than left to right, because we read left to right, so therefore our brain will fill in the gaps of words. It'll fill in the bits that we might not see. we might not actually notice. And that's the same when we're scanning for people as well. We might actually miss someone because our brain has just filled in that gap. But if we go right to left, there's evidence that our brain has to actually work harder to try and scan over that area. So that's horizontal scanning. Vertical. Again, we can go left to right or right to left, but there's more evidence that says that right to left is actually better. You miss less things. So that's how we'd scan across an area vertically. Grouping, and I touched on this before, we could be grouping swimmers together by counting them in their groups. We could be grouping them by families, by genders, by hair colours, by togs type, by user groups. There's so many different ways we can group people. That means that your flag time will actually go really fast because you won't make it through all of these categories that you could group people into. Connecting the dots. Now I don't use this one very often because we're on the west coast and we've got such hectic surf. I find that if I'm making some kind of a pattern by connecting the heads of the people in the water, one wave will change my pattern really drastically. So I'll definitely use this one on the east coast, but not so much on the west coast because the pattern changes heaps. Head counts. So counting all the swimmers in an area, and yes, we could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or we can group count them. I find that I'll count in 3s and 2s and 5s. They're generally how I count rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I end up grouping people together like this. There's 4 and plus 2 is 6. And that's how I do my head counts. But again, you can do them any way you want. This is really handy for keeping track of everyone on your beach or everyone in your flags. Okay, let's scan. Okay, so I'm going to leave this picture up, and what I really want you to do is I want you to first, we're going to imagine that you are on flags, you're this person here, and I want you to horizontally scan your flagged area, so you're only counting everyone in your flags. Your job is only flags because you are on flags. So use horizontal and have a look at the types of people you've got in your water. Alright, use vertical. Now group them together. These guys look like they're together. He looks like he's doing a big swim by himself, but these two might be together. These guys might be together. We could group them as people inside the flags if we were this guy. We could group them as people swimming freestyle as opposed to people just watching the waves. We could group them male, female, for example. Alright, connect the dots, make yourself a pattern. Head counts. Okay, so there's 17, and I did that by 4 plus 2 is 6, plus 4, 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 4 is 14, 17 right there, or we can do it horizontally. Head counts, we've got 6 across the back in two groups of 3, then we've got 2, 4, 6 in the middle, 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 5, 17. So there's heaps of different ways that we could do this grouping system. So why do we change patterns and strategies? Well, it's to reduce boredom. We want to be able to stay alert in where we are. The other thing about this picture in itself is I want you to take careful note of it. They might have cut it out of this round of exams, but there was in the last season exam, there was a blank bit in the exam where you had to draw a picture like this. So it'll ask you, draw your setup for patrol. Unfortunately, we don't rock a tent, but they want you to draw it where you think it should go. For example, this boat would be closer to the water's edge and would have some lifeguards with it, maybe some life jackets. Every lifeguard that you've got has tube and fins. There's tubes on each of the flags. There's rescue boards next to the flags. And so you've got all of these items. We've got our tower in the middle here. There's actually evidence to say that if we've got a tower smack in the middle, that it actually makes it hard to tell depth perception. It makes it harder on depth perception, and it is sometimes a better idea to put it off to the side, but that's not the answer that they're looking for. They're looking for your tower to be directly in the middle, and when they're talking about a tower, they're talking about a mobile tower. Obviously for us, we've got a rip right in front of our stationary tower, so we would never put the flags in that position there. So this is our ideal pretend picture of what it looks like to patrol a beach. So take careful note of it, because you may have to draw it if they've kept it in this round of the exam. Victim identification. So I've got a list of people here that are considered high-risk beach users. Why are children, elderly, very thin people, or rather extremes in sizes, so very largely overweight people, why are they high risk at a beach? Why are migrants high risk at a beach? Flotation users, and we did talk about that briefly, so you might already be able to answer that. Intoxicated people, improperly dressed people. What does it tell us when we see someone walking into the water in pants, or a lava, for example? Why are these people high risk? Well, here are your reasons. Children can be knocked over easily by waves. Parents should be within arm's reach at all times. That means that if you're on flags and you've got a kid in the flags without his parent there, his or her parent there, we need to find out where that kid's parent is and go and ask them, hey, you need to be within arm's reach of them. Elderly, they usually lack physical strength and stamina, and that's the same as overweight or size extremes as well. So you'll find, I've seen a lady get knocked over by a wave before, and because she was old, it was only a tiny wave too. She couldn't actually stand up, and the next wave came over. We're talking like knee-deep water, but because she was old, she couldn't get up, and a lifeguard had to go and assist her. Very thin people. They get cold really easily, and they lack physical strength. Migrants generally have little experience of New Zealand surf conditions. That's really important. I have a couple of friends who were top swimmers in their country in Africa. Absolutely amazing swimmers. The problem was, though, that they swim in a lake, so the idea of a rip current was foreign to them. And even when they were being dragged out to sea at Piha, they had no idea what was going on. They couldn't understand why the water was pulling them. So it doesn't matter how great a swimmer you are, if you don't understand our surf conditions, you're going to get into trouble. Flotation users. People who are less competent swimmers, less confident swimmers, will often take flotation devices out with them. If they get blown offshore or if they lose their flotation device, they end up being in deep water, and in deeper water than other people because they had enough confidence with their flotation device to get into places that they shouldn't be in. Intoxicated people. Alcohol and drugs impairs people's judgment and negatively affects their abilities. Their swimming is now sloppy, their breathing is hard, their heart's working overtime. All of those things make it a really bad idea for people to be drinking in the water, or on drugs and in the water. Improperly dressed people. Now it might be a cultural thing, as in wearing lavas and stuff, or it might just be people wearing jeans, and the weight of clothing is going to make it hard for them to swim. The other thing we know is that if you're wearing jeans into the water, you generally have less swimming experience, because someone who has grown up around pools will wear togs. So you can make some pretty quick assessments of people as well. Are there any other groups that you think you could add to this high risk list? I've got 2, maybe 3 more that I could add to this list. Seeing someone clinging to an object. Maybe they just thought it would be funny to take a chili bin out into the water and see what, how well you could float in it or whatever, or a ball. But that could also mean that they're actually just trying to stay afloat. Seeing 2 heads together, maybe someone is actually trying to hold someone up. The other thing that I've seen in that has been actually people just trying to get some romantic time in the water, shall we say. And you'll find they even move further away from you, so maybe sending a young lifeguard's not the best plan. You might find someone injured. Someone injured will display differently as well. So you might see all the characteristic signs of them being great. Maybe they're a lifeguard, they're in togs and a wetsuit, they've got fins on, but their movements are really weird. And what we find is actually they've injured themselves and they can't wave for help, or they can't get back in by themselves. So keeping a really keen eye out for these people as well. What are the signs that you know of to identify someone who's in trouble in the water? Poor swimming's a good one. Hair in the eyes, facing the shore, hand waving, climbing the ladder, bobbing up and down. The one we hope to see if a swimmer is in trouble is one arm straight up in the air still. It's actually really hard to do, especially if you're floating and lying on your back at the same time. Poor swimming because they're tired. Hair in their eyes because they don't care anymore about pulling it back off their face. Their goal is move your hands to keep yourself afloat. Facing the shore. If they're facing the waves and duck diving under every one of them, then that doesn't really say that I'm struggling, that I'm in distress. Hand waving, they're trying to attract attention, Climbing the ladder, and so that looks like a vertical dog paddle. Bobbing up and down as well, so that you might see their head go up and down underwater. Maybe they're just trying to touch the ground and jump off it a little bit. So that's another thing you see. I've got this little video for you, which is not too bad at identifying how quickly all this actually happens, and some of these signs of a swimmer who's entering the drowning process. You'll see some of these as well. And that's the end of scanning and victim ID. Thanks for watching.